Welcome back to Truth Serum. You know, some topics just never get old.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're diving into one that's captivated people for centuries,
Right.
the Pope's prophecy.
Ah, yes, one of those intriguing mysteries, blends predictions and history, and maybe even a touch of conspiracy.
It really does.
And it all centers around the papacy, doesn't it?
It sure does. Specifically, we're going to be talking about St. Malachy,
Okay.
a 12th century Irish bishop.
Mm-hmm.
And the story goes that he had a vision,
Okay.
a detailed list of all future popes
Right.
leading up to, well, let's just say some pretty major events, including the destruction of Rome.
Right, and what makes it even more intriguing is that this list was supposedly hidden away for centuries, only to be discovered right before a papal election.
Talk about timing.
Really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does make you wonder.
Yeah.
So what exactly is on this list? Is it like a timeline of popes?
It's not quite a timeline, but it does list 112 short Latin phrases, each supposedly describing a pope from Malachy's time all the way to the very end.
Wow.
Some of these descriptions seem incredibly accurate, almost like he had a glimpse into the future,
Yeah?
but others are a bit vague, open to interpretation.
Right.
And that's where the debate begins. Is this genuine prophecy
Hmm.
or a cleverly crafted hoax?
It's like trying to solve a historical riddle, but I'm guessing the real focus is on that final entry, right?
Exactly.
The one that supposedly predicts the end of it all?
The final pope on Malachy's list is referred to as Petrus Romanus, which translates to Peter the Roman.
Okay.
And according to the prophecy, his reign is supposed to mark the destruction of Rome and a massive upheaval within the church.
Okay, hold on. Destruction of Rome. That's pretty intense. But are we talking literal destruction here, like buildings crumbling, fires raining from the sky? Or could it be more symbolic, maybe a collapse of the church's power or influence?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's where interpretations really diverge.
Okay.
Some people believe in a literal doomsday scenario,
Right?
while others see it as a more symbolic transformation. Maybe a shift in the church's role in the world, or even a broader global transformation.
Interesting.
And this is where things get especially interesting when we consider the current pope, Pope Francis.
Now that you mention it, Pope Francis is the first pope to choose that name.
Yes.
A name with a pretty significant connection to St. Francis of Assisi, whose father, interestingly enough, was named Peter. Coincidence? Or something more?
It definitely adds another layer to the mystery, doesn't it?
It does.
And when you consider the unusual circumstances surrounding his predecessor's resignation,
Right.
the first papal resignation in centuries, it really makes you wonder if there's something more to it all.
We are certainly living in interesting times with global tensions, climate change, political turmoil. It's easy to feel like we're on the edge of something.
Yeah.
But is it the dramatic end that Malachy predicted? Some say it could be, and point to Pope Francis's papacy as evidence. Others are skeptical, pointing out that the Church has survived countless challenges throughout history.
You're right, the Catholic Church is a remarkably resilient institution.
Yeah.
It's weathered many storms before, but then there are those who believe that even if there is something to the prophecy, the Vatican might be keeping it quiet to prevent mass panic.
That's not entirely out of the realm of possibility, is it? The Vatican is often seen as a place shrouded in secrecy,
Right.
with whispers of hidden archives and knowledge kept from the public.
Hmm.
Is there something they know about the prophecy that they're not sharing?
It certainly fuels the imagination, doesn't it? What secrets might be tucked away in those Vatican archives.
Right.
And when we consider another intriguing piece of this puzzle,
Okay.
the third secret of Fatima, the plot thickens even further.
The third secret of Fatima, I vaguely remember hearing about this.
Yes.
It was a message revealed to 3 children in Portugal back in 1917, right?
Yes, exactly.
And the Vatican kept part of it secret for decades,
Exactly.
which of course fueled all sorts of speculation and conspiracy theories.
Right.
So how does this third secret tie into the Pope's prophecy?
Well, the Vatican finally released the third secret in 2000,
Okay.
and it described a vision of a bishop dressed in white who is killed by a group of soldiers. The Vatican interpreted this as a symbolic premonition of the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II in 1981.
Oh, wow.
But not everyone accepted that interpretation.
Right.
Many people felt that the Vatican was still holding back parts of the secret, perhaps something even more unsettling or controversial.
So are we saying that this unreleased portion of the third secret could be foreshadowing the events predicted by St. Malachy, specifically the round of Petrus Romanus and the upheaval within the church?
It's a compelling possibility.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But before we get too deep into the Fatima mystery, let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and take a closer look at some of the specific entries in Malachy's list.
All right.
After all, the accuracy of these descriptions could hold the key to understanding the prophecy's validity.
Good point.
So let's go back to St. Malachy's list of popes.
Okay.
Are there any specific entries that stand out as being particularly accurate, or maybe even a little eerie in how they match up with history?
Absolutely. There are quite a few descriptions on Malachy's list that have left people scratching their heads in amazement at their apparent accuracy.
Really?
Like, for example, one entry describes a pope as de Rua Albo, which means from the white countryside.
Okay.
And guess what? This pope, Pope Pius VII, was actually born in a town called Cesena, which means cut white.
Wow, that's a pretty striking coincidence.
It is.
It almost feels like Malachy was looking through time.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Are there any other examples like that?
There are. Another entry refers to a pope as Flos Florum, which means flower of flowers.
Okay.
This pope, Pope Paul VI, had a coat of arms that featured, you guessed it, 3 fleurs-de-lis, a stylized flower symbol.
That's incredible. Two seemingly accurate predictions like that.
Yeah.
It's hard to dismiss them as mere chance.
Right.
It makes you wonder how Malachy could have known these details centuries in advance.
Truly remarkable. And there are even more entries on the list that seem to align with historical events or papal characteristics.
Okay, this is getting really interesting.
It is.
But I have to ask, what about the descriptions that aren't so clear-cut?
Sure.
The ones that are more open to interpretation?
Right.
How do those factor into the overall discussion of the prophecy's validity?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
And it's one that fuels a lot of the debate surrounding St. Malachy's prophecy.
Okay,
While some entries seem undeniably accurate,
right.
others are more ambiguous, leaving room for different interpretations and even skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
For example, one pope is described as Pastor et Nata, which translates to shepherd and sailor.
Okay.
Now, this could refer to a pope who was skilled in both spiritual guidance and worldly affairs, but it's not as concrete as some of the other descriptions.
It's like trying to decipher a code, isn't it?
It is.
You have some clear messages and then others that are more like puzzles.
Yeah.
But even with the ambiguous ones, there's this undeniable sense of mystery and intrigue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps people coming back to this prophecy,
Yeah.
trying to make sense of its cryptic messages and connect them to historical events.
Right?
It sparks our curiosity and makes us wonder if there's a deeper meaning behind it all.
So are we saying that the prophecy is either completely true or completely false?
Hmm.
Or could it be somewhere in between?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Could some entries be accurate predictions while others are more symbolic or metaphorical?
Right.
That's a possibility that many scholars and enthusiasts consider.
Okay.
It's possible that Malachy had genuine visions of certain popes and events,
Mm-hmm.
while other entries might be more symbolic,
Right.
reflecting broader trends or themes within the papacy.
Interesting.
It's like trying to separate fact from fiction in a historical thriller,
It really is.
but the lines can get blurry.
It sounds like we're dealing with a complex puzzle with pieces from history, religion, and maybe even a touch of the supernatural.
Yeah.
And as we delve deeper into this mystery, it's important to consider all angles, to be both open-minded and discerning.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into the Pope's prophecy,
We have?
but there's still so much more to explore,
Yes.
including the enigmatic Petrus Romanus and the potential connection to Pope Francis.
Right, and let's not forget the tantalizing mystery of the third secret of Fatima,
Yes.
which could hold the key to understanding the prophecy's ultimate meaning.
Stay tuned because we'll be uncovering more of these secrets and exploring the possible interpretations of this age-old prophecy in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to Truth Serum.
Now, before we jump back into St. Malachy's list, I think we need to spend a little more time unpack on this third secret of Fatima.
Right.
It feels like a pretty significant piece of this puzzle.
You're absolutely right. It's a fascinating and somewhat controversial aspect of this whole discussion.
Mm-hmm.
As we mentioned earlier, the third secret of Fatima refers to a series of visions experienced by 3 shepherd children in Fatima, Portugal, back in 1917.
Okay.
The children claim to have encountered the Virgin Mary, who entrusted them with 3 secrets.
And the first 2 secrets were revealed pretty quickly, right?
Yes,
They involve visions of hell and a prophecy about the end of World War I and the rise of communist Russia.
that's right.
But the third secret remained hidden for decades, which of course fueled all sorts of speculation and conspiracy theories.
Exactly. The Vatican finally released the third secret in 2000,
Okay.
and it described a vision of a bishop dressed in white who is killed by a group of soldiers. The Vatican interpreted this as a symbolic premonition of the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II in 1981.
But not everyone accepted that interpretation, did they?
Right.
Many people felt that the Vatican was still holding back parts of the secret,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps something even more unsettling or controversial.
That's right. Some believe the released version was incomplete, or that there was a more disturbing message about the fate of the church or even the world that the Vatican chose to keep hidden.
And that's where the connection to Malachy's prophecy comes in, right?
Exactly.
Could the third secret be foreshadowing the events predicted by St. Malachy, specifically the reign of Petrus Romanus and the upheaval within the church?
It's a compelling possibility.
Yeah.
Some theorists believe the bishop dressed in white in the third secret could represent not John Paul II, but a future pope, perhaps even Petrus Romanus himself.
So are we saying that the third secret could be predicting the death of the final pope,
Well,
leading to the fulfillment of Malachy's prophecy?
it's a theory that's definitely out there,
Okay.
and it's one that adds an even greater sense of urgency and intrigue to the whole discussion.
This is getting pretty heavy.
Yeah,
But let's step back for a moment and consider the broader context here.
okay,
We're talking about prophecies and visions from centuries ago.
right.
How much weight should we really give these things in the modern world?
That's the age-old question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do prophecies offer genuine glimpses into the future, or are they simply reflections of the fears and anxieties of the time in which they were conceived?
I guess it comes down to how you choose to interpret them, right? Some people might dismiss them as superstition or folklore, while others might see them as warnings or guideposts for the future.
Exactly, and whether you believe in the literal fulfillment of these prophecies or see them as more symbolic representations of broader spiritual or societal shifts,
Right.
there's no denying that they spark our imaginations and make us think about the big questions.
They certainly do. I mean, if we entertain the possibility that Malachy's prophecy is accurate
Okay,
and that Pope Francis is Petrus Romanus,
right.
what would that actually mean for the world?
Hmm.
What kind of destruction of Rome and upheaval within the church are we talking about?
Well, if we're looking at it from a literal perspective,
Okay.
it could involve some sort of catastrophic event in Rome itself, maybe a natural disaster, or even an act of terrorism.
But it could also be more metaphorical, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe a symbolic collapse of the church's authority or a radical transformation in its teachings and practices.
It could involve a major schism within the church,
Mm-hmm.
a loss of influence on the global stage,
Okay.
or even a move away from traditional doctrines towards a more modern or inclusive approach to faith.
It's almost like there are two parallel tracks here.
Yeah.
The literal interpretation with its focus on physical events, and the symbolic interpretation that deals with more abstract concepts of change and transformation.
And it's up to each individual to decide which interpretation resonates most with them.
Right?
There's no right or wrong answer.
It's all very thought-provoking, that's for sure.
It is.
But I'm curious, are there any other interpretations of Petrus Romanus and the prophecies ending out there? Maybe some that offer a more optimistic or hopeful outlook?
There are. Some scholars believe that the destruction of Rome could actually represent a purging or cleansing of corruption within the church,
Okay.
leading to a period of renewal and spiritual rebirth.
Interesting.
They see Petrus Romanus not as a harbinger of doom, but as a reformer who will usher in a new era of faith and understanding.
So instead of an apocalyptic ending, it could be the start of something new and positive.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that makes these prophecies so fascinating.
Yeah.
They're open to multiple interpretations,
Right.
allowing people to find meaning and relevance in them based on their own beliefs and perspective.
It's like a choose-your-own-adventure prophecy. But seriously, I think it's important to remember that we're dealing with predictions and interpretations here, not concrete facts.
I agree. It's crucial to approach these topics with a healthy dose of skepticism and critical thinking. We should be asking questions, exploring different viewpoints, and considering the historical and cultural context surrounding these prophecies.
Well said. But now I'm curious, what about you? What are your personal thoughts on all of this? Do you believe there's any truth to Malachy's prophecy? And if so, how do you interpret the role of Petrus Romanus and the potential connection to Pope Francis?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one that I've grappled with myself.
Sure.
I find myself drawn to both the literal and symbolic interpretations of the prophecy.
Okay.
On the one hand, the historical accuracy of some of Malachy's predictions is hard to ignore.
Right.
But I also see the potential for symbolic meanings representing broader shifts within the church and the world at large.
It sounds like you're keeping an open mind, which I think is the best approach to these kinds of mysteries.
I definitely try to.
Good.
After all, the beauty of exploring these topics is that it encourages us to think critically, challenge our assumptions,
Yeah.
and engage in meaningful conversations about faith, history, and the future.
Well said. And who knows, maybe we'll have some answers in our lifetime, or maybe the mystery will continue to intrigue and inspire generations to come.
I suspect it will be the latter,
Yeah.
but that's part of what makes this topic so compelling.
Now, if we wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into the Pope's prophecy,
Okay.
I want to encourage you, our listeners, to share your thoughts with us. What are your interpretations of Malachy's list, the third secret of Fatima, and the figure of Petrus Romanus? Do you think Pope Francis could be the final pope? Head over to our website or social media pages and let us know. We love hearing your theories and perspectives.
And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to Truth Serum so you don't miss our next deep dive into the mysteries and unexplained phenomena that capture our imaginations.
We'll be back soon with part 3, where we'll continue to explore the possible interpretations of the Pope's prophecy and what it could mean for the future of the Church and the world. Welcome back to Truth Serum, where we've been on quite a journey exploring this enigmatic Pope's prophecy.
It's been a fascinating one, hasn't it?
It has.
We've delved into St. Malachy's mysterious list of popes,
Right.
examined those strikingly accurate descriptions, and pondered the more ambiguous entries that leave room for interpretation.
We've also explored the possible connection between the prophecy and the third secret of Fatima.
Right.
That message entrusted to those 3 young shepherds in Portugal.
It's quite the tapestry.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
And as we head into this final part of our deep dive, I think it's time to bring it all together.
I agree. We've laid out a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and now it's time to see how they might fit together.
Exactly. So let's revisit this central figure, Petrus Romanus.
Okay.
The final pope on Malachy's list.
Right.
His reign is supposed to usher in the destruction of Rome and a major upheaval within the Church.
It's a big one.
We've discussed the possibility of literal versus symbolic interpretations and the potential connection to Pope Francis.
Right.
But is there anything else we can glean from Malachy's cryptic description of this final pope?
Well, let's look at the Latin phrase itself. In persecution extrema SRE sedebit,
Okay.
this translates to, during the final persecution, he will sit on the throne of the Holy Roman Church.
Okay, so that definitely reinforces the idea of challenging times.
It does.
Perhaps even persecution for the Church.
Right.
But it also emphasizes that this pope will remain in power, sitting on the throne throughout these trials.
That's a crucial point.
It is.
Petrus Romanus isn't described as fleeing or abdicating.
Right.
He's portrayed as a steadfast leader guiding the Church through its darkest hour.
That makes me think of the imagery often associated with St. Peter.
Okay.
The first pope,
Right.
he was a fisherman,
Yes.
a symbol of strength and resilience in the face of stormy seas. Could there be a connection there? Is Petrus Romanus meant to embody those same qualities, guiding the Church through a metaphorical storm?
It's an interesting parallel.
It is.
And when you consider that Pope Francis has emphasized a more humble, pastoral approach to leadership,
Right.
it aligns with that image of a shepherd guiding his flock through difficult times.
It also makes me think of some of the challenges the Church is facing today. We have rising secularism, debates about traditional doctrines, and a growing disconnect between some younger generations and organized religion. Could those be the persecutions that Malachy foresaw?
It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
And if those are the trials that Petrus Romanus must face,
Right.
it suggests that his papacy will be defined by navigating these complex issues and finding ways to bridge the divides within the Church and between the Church and the world.
It's a tall order.
It is.
But if we look back at history, we see that the Church has gone through periods of transformation before,
Right.
adapting to new realities and challenges.
Absolutely.
The Renaissance, the Reformation, the Enlightenment, all of these eras forced the Church to confront change and reevaluate its role in society.
You're right. The Church has a remarkable ability to evolve and transform itself
Yeah.
while still holding on to its core beliefs and values.
Right.
And perhaps that's the message embedded within Malachy's prophecy.
Okay.
It's not necessarily about a literal end,
Right.
but a period of profound change, a crucible from which the Church will emerge, perhaps even stronger.
It's a more hopeful interpretation, that's for sure.
It is.
And I think it resonates with the idea that prophecies aren't about predicting the future with absolute certainty,
Right.
but about providing guidance, warnings, or perhaps even inspiration for how to navigate the unknown.
Exactly. They invite us to consider the possibilities, to engage in dialogue and debate,
Yeah.
and to ultimately make choices that will shape the future, both for ourselves and for the institutions that influence our lives.
And in the case of the Pope's prophecy, it encourages us to think critically about the role of faith,
Right.
the challenges facing organized religion, and the potential for transformation and renewal.
Absolutely.
It also reminds us that history is an ongoing narrative.
It is.
We are all part of a story that is still being written, and our actions, beliefs, and choices contribute to the unfolding chapters.
That's a profound thought.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Pope's prophecy, I think the biggest takeaway is that we shouldn't be looking for definitive answers, but rather embracing the mystery, the ambiguity, and the opportunity for thoughtful reflection.
I wholeheartedly agree.
And I hope our exploration has sparked your curiosity, encouraged you to question your assumptions, and perhaps even inspired you to do a little digging of your own.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll look back on this episode and say, we were right there, witnessing the unfolding of a prophecy, watching history in the making.
Yeah,
Or maybe we'll chuckle at how we got swept up in the mystery and intrigue.
right.
Either way, it's been a fascinating journey.
Indeed it has. And I have to commend our listeners for joining us on this deep dive.
I agree.
Your questions, insights, and theories have enriched our discussion and reminded us that the pursuit of knowledge is always a collaborative effort.
Absolutely. So as we sign off, we want to hear from you. What are your lingering thoughts on the Pope's prophecy? What other mysteries or unexplained phenomena would you like us to tackle on Truth Serum? Head over to our website or social media pages and share your ideas. We love exploring these fascinating topics with you.
Until next time, stay curious, keep questioning, and never stop exploring the wonders of the world around us.